Well, greetings, church family. Today's daily Bible reading had us beginning the book of Song of Songs or Song of Solomon, chapters 1 and 2. And indeed, in chapter 1, verse 1, we see the intro to the book, identifying it as the Song of Songs written by Solomon. And what we're going to see is we're going to see different viewpoints: the bride, Solomon, and then a chorus that's going to speak up time and again. So chapter 1, verses 2 through 4a, the first part of verse 4, it's the bride, the Shulamite woman, expressing her desire to be wedded to her beloved Solomon. The rest of verse 4 is a chorus speaking up, reiterating the bride's desires to have Solomon as her husband. Chapter 1, verses 5 through 7, the bride speaks once again, describing her own complexion as being especially darkened because of working in the vineyard, seemingly as a punishment by her brothers. And the bride longs to know where her shepherd lover, Solomon, is dwelling. She wants to go be with him and not be out in those vineyards any longer. This is a symbolic way of declaring she wants to be properly introduced into his dwelling place to become the man's wife. Well, Solomon responds in chapter 1, verses 8 through 10 with romantic speech. He extols the Shulamite woman's beauty. And the chorus intervenes in verse 11 by underscoring Solomon's appreciation of his future bride, describing the riches that he believes she deserves. Chapter 1, verses 12 through 14, the bride responds with further descriptions of the warmth and attraction she finds in Solomon, once again focusing, if you've noticed, on what she finds to be the man's attractive sense. And then in verse 15, Solomon replies in this back and forth with further expressions of the woman's beauty. In chapter 1, verses 16 through chapter 2, verse 1, the bride speaks again, concentrating now on Solomon's physical features and the thought of how full of life and how sturdy their impending marriage will be, as well as how prized she anticipates her future husband will find her. And Solomon then affirms with a yes in verse 2 of chapter 2. Indeed, he finds the Shulamite woman to be like a precious flower that stood out from all the other women he saw at that time. Chapter 2, verses 3 through 6, the bride picks up the dialogue once again. She responds to her bridegroom in like kind. She now declares him to be uniquely desirable to her. She emphasizes the provision and loving comfort that she anticipates Solomon will bring her in marriage. And in verse 7, Solomon once again chimes in, this time showing his affection for his future bride by asking others to let his love rest while she may, while he comes on his way to be wedded to her. Chapter 2, verses 8 through 13, we get back to the bride's perspective. She first expresses her anticipation for her husband's arrival to go through their wedding ceremony and consummate the marriage. And then the bride remembers the words of her beloved future husband when he told her what time of year he would arrive. What are the signs of the changing of the seasons around that he's going to show up to take her as his wife. And then Solomon cuts in verses 14 and 15 with his loving remarks over her beauty and the joy that he finds in the Shulamite woman's voice and body. And he proceeds to make a request that just as foxes have to be removed from vineyards so that they do not destroy any fruit, any obstacles, in like manner, any obstacles in the impending marriage between Solomon and his bride, he's asking that they would be removed so that the marriage can flourish. And then finally, at least as it pertains to our chapters today, verses 16 and 17, the bride speaks once again, declaring the mutual devotion that her future husband and she have for each other, and beckoning his return to her to be married. Well, we can apply this in our lives by thinking of these words as well as what Solomon wrote in the book of Proverbs. As we read verses like this, it ought to inspire us to be even more devoted to our respective spouses, delighting in them as the gifts of God that they surely are. And how much more this is true of the marriage between those who have confessed their sin to our holy God, or if you're in a marriage where you're the only one who has repented from your sin and trusted in Christ Jesus alone as the way, the truth, and the life, as salvation from God's wrath which is to come. How much more so that we should take our delight as it pertains to physical pleasures that we might find in another person, that we would find that only in our spouse, Proverbs 5:15 through 23, drink water from your own cistern and fresh water from your own well. Should your springs be dispersed abroad, streams of water in the streets, let them be yours alone, and not for strangers with you. Let your fountain be blessed, and rejoice in the wife of your youth. As a loving hind and a graceful doe, let her breast satisfy you at all times. Be exhilarated always with her love. For why should you, my son, be exhilarated with an adulteress, and embrace the bosom of a foreigner? For the ways of a man are before the eyes of Yahweh, and he watches all his paths. His own iniquities will capture the wicked, and he will be held with the cords of his sin. He will die for lack of instruction, and in the greatness of his folly he will go astray. Strong warning there that we would keep our minds and our eyes free from looking at those that are not our spouses, whether they're people that we see in close proximity to us, or they're people that we're seeing afar, such as through our phones or on a computer screen. Let us take that delight in our spouse, be inspired by what we've read in Song of Solomon today, chapters 1 and 2. And I hope you have a great day.